In the vast, barren wilderness, the scorching sun beat down relentlessly, painting the yellow landscape with dust and heat. Amidst the desolate stretch of land, a petite girl, no older than 6 or 7, dashed forward, her movements swift and graceful despite her fragile frame. She wore a light yellow robe adorned with pink plum blossoms, her black hair styled in 2 buns atop her head. Her bright eyes, delicate features, and red lips spoke of her youth, yet her grip on an ancient pellet drum was tight and unwavering. The drum's surface was decorated with azure snake designs, its soft rattle filling the air as she ran. The girl, though small, showed remarkable agility as she entered a patch of tall grass. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she pressed on, undeterred. Suddenly, a harsh voice called out, "Stop, you little witch!" The girl's face drained of color, and fear struck her heart. She quickly spun the drum, causing bursts of azure light to radiate from its surface, sending waves of light onto the grass in front of her. Each burst fizzled out as soon as it struck, but she continued, pushing forward into the grass. The pursuer, a burly man wielding a shining podao, closed in, his eyes scanning the ground for any sign of the girl. His sharp gaze fell upon the footprints she left behind, and he rushed forward, raising his weapon. At that moment, azure snakes shot from the grass, but the man was prepared. With a quick talisman and a slash of his podao, he cut down the serpents with ease. The man's cold demeanor faltered for just a moment as he stood over the remains of the snakes, but his pursuit did not cease. As the man advanced, 2 other figures arrived, a Taoist priest and a rough-looking man, bruised and disheveled. They conversed briefly, and the burly man explained that the girl's cunning was a dangerous threat. He suggested using a fire cloud talisman and a wind lure technique to force the girl out of hiding. The 2 men agreed, and with a flash of light, a wave of fire spread through the tall grass, consuming everything in its path. As the fire spread, the girl, desperate and covered in soot, dashed out of the burning grass, her breath ragged. Just as she thought she might escape, a net of azure threads descended, trapping her. The girl's eyes widened in panic, but she bit her tongue, and in a flash, her form turned into a small tree, a wood substitution technique. The 3 men were taken by surprise, but they quickly regained their composure. They pursued her, and after several close calls, the girl was cornered, her strength waning. At the moment of her capture, a strange rumbling erupted from the rock behind her. The ground shook, and the large stone she leaned against shattered, revealing a towering figure cloaked in dust. The newcomer was tall and broad, his face obscured by the gray powder, yet his unremarkable features and dark complexion made him an imposing figure. The girl and the 3 men stared in disbelief, the air thick with tension, as this mysterious figure appeared amidst the chaos. In a barren plain, the young man, who had emerged from a massive rock, stood motionless, unaware of the danger looming over him. A little girl clung desperately to his leg, her watery eyes full of hope as she cried for his help against the approaching enemies. The 3 men, sensing something unusual, released their spiritual senses and found no trace of magic within him. Either he was immortal or using an unknown technique to hide his powers. The burly man from the Bloodsword sect demanded answers, but the young man remained silent, unperturbed. The tension grew, and the burly man, growing frustrated, summoned a powerful black net to ensnare the young man. But the little girl, despite her exhaustion, tried to stop them. The young man finally reacted when the net tightened around him. Without a word, he effortlessly tore the net apart, stunning the 3 men. Their attacks, flying needles, lightning, and talismans, seemed to have no effect, as the young man remained unscathed. The 3 enemies, startled but relentless, combined their efforts, aiming to overwhelm him with a barrage of attacks, but it was to no avail. The young man reached out with lightning speed, catching the burly man's arm, and before the enemy could react, his attacks, especially a lethal ruler strike and blood mist, were returned with devastating power. In mere moments, the burly man was crushed, and his companions met similar fates as the young man unleashed his hidden might, leaving no survivors. The little girl, though battered, watched in awe as the young man swallowed the remnants of his adversary's attacks, his face blank and unreadable. The little girl stood in stunned silence, her eyes wide in disbelief as she gazed upon the remains of her tormentors. Her small body trembled, and without warning, Tears cascaded down her face in a torrent of sorrow. Her cries filled the air, a lament to the injustice she had endured, a song of grief to the heavens. As the minutes passed, her tears slowed, and she regained her composure. With a newfound resolve, she turned to the mangled bodies of the three bandits, using her sharpened azure claws to tear into them with fierce vengeance. Blood splattered, and the remains were reduced to nothing but ash, consumed by green flames. She then knelt, murmuring promises of vengeance and justice, her heart heavy with the weight of her loss. Exhausted, she collapsed once more, panting heavily, her energy spent. Yet, despite her exhaustion, she gathered the stolen treasures left behind by the bandits, a small sign that justice had been served. As the wind howled and the day darkened, the girl, fearful of the encroaching night, sought comfort in the presence of the young man who had slain her enemies. Though he remained a silent, distant figure, she found solace in his silent presence. "Brother Rock," she called hesitantly, her voice trembling as she approached him. Yet the young man remained unresponsive, his gaze distant and unfocused. Undeterred, she introduced herself and thanked him for his actions, but he offered no words in return. He simply gazed at her with vacant eyes, his expression unchanged. Curiosity overcame the girl, and she circled him, inspecting his form. Despite his lack of reaction, she could sense something extraordinary about him. His power, his resilience, his otherworldly nature. He was no mere mortal, and when the storm struck, the young man instinctively shielded her from the rain, an act of silent protection that warmed her heart. As the storm passed and the world around them grew still, the girl continued to speak to the young man, trying to draw him out of his stupor. She offered food, companionship, and a promise of safety. She called him Brother Rock, her words filled with both reverence and affection. But still, he remained silent, a shadow of a man, lost in his own world. Eventually, the girl, her resolve firm, decided to leave the desolate place, urging the young man to follow her. As they walked into the setting sun, her cheerful voice carried into the wind the promise of a new bond forged in the silence between them. Amidst a howling blizzard and the crushing cold of a primitive mountain forest, the young man Rock sat motionless in the forsaken mountain god's shrine. Though the winds raged outside, the warmth of a lone fire flickered within the ruins, casting a soft glow on his stoic face. Liu Lair, her brow creased in distress from a haunting dream, clung to him, her tears flowing despite her sleep. His expression remained vacant, yet his actions were gentle as he adjusted her position, guarding her from the wind's bite. Later, deep in the wilderness, a giant gray bear, a creature of terrifying size and strength, confronted them. Liu Lair trembled with fear, but Rock remained unmoved. The bear, sensing something beyond its comprehension, backed away in fear and fled. Liu Lair, relieved yet perplexed by Rock's unwavering calmness, spoke to him softly, longing for a response, but received none. They moved on, entering a cave, and the silence between them deepened. Years passed, and Liu Lair, now older and more graceful, playfully adorned Rock with a floral wreath. Though his face remained unchanged, she found solace in the small gestures that hinted at an unspoken connection. As they journeyed through the wilderness, they came upon a mighty city, Farbright City. Liu Lair's thoughts turned to vengeance for the wrongs done to her, but Rock, ever silent, offered only a comforting gesture, his hand gently resting on her head. She wiped away her tears, strengthened by his presence, and with renewed resolve, they walked toward the city, ready to face whatever awaited them. In the bustling Farbright City, a place of thriving commerce and transport, Liu Lair and her companion, Liu Shi, stood at the city gate, both nervous and hopeful. The sun gleamed off the octagonal copper mirror that faced the gate, its trigram design radiating a righteous energy. After a brief examination, they passed through without issue, though Liu Lair secretly relied on an aura concealment talisman to mask her demonic nature. Navigating the crowded streets, Liu Lair marveled at the city's craftsmanship, while Liu Shi remained emotionless. She led him through various medical clinics, desperately seeking a cure for his mysterious affliction. However, all the doctors could offer were dismissals, unable to diagnose or treat his condition. Hope flared briefly when Dr. Liu, from the Wild Chrysanthemum Clinic, recognized the symptoms and identified a curse or soul injury as the likely cause. Liu Lair, disheartened but determined, began to contemplate her next steps when suddenly a commotion erupted in the streets. A rampaging horse beast, an azure-scaled creature, charged through the crowds, dragging a swaying carriage behind it. Panic spread as people dove for cover. Lu Lair instinctively grabbed Lu Shi and attempted to move away, but the beast was already upon them, its frothing mouth bared, its putrid stench filling the air. The situation was perilous, and their only hope now lay in evading the wild creature's charge.